Welcome back, everybody, to the Big Sky Now podcast, where this is the football edition. Me and John Allen had our fun with the basketball edition of Big Sky, but now we're back to football as spring games are already beginning to kick off, starting with the Griz this Friday. But it's just the Kalispell crew today, me, Fritz Neighbor, and John Allen, as Mark Nelke wasn't available, and sad to see, but Ian Bavona has moved back to New York, so he will no longer be part of this podcast. But best of luck to Ian in the future with everything he's got going on. So, guys, it's been a while. We got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right in. Fritz, you're going to be at this game on Friday for the spring game with the Griz. What are you expecting in this game? What are some things that you're hoping to see that the Griz team improve on, or what do you think about this game in general?
It's not a game. It's kind of a glorified practice. I asked Bobby how many plays we might expect, and he said that's a question for Thursday. But I think they've had a couple kind of pseudo scrimmages where they went out between 95 and 125 plays. So I imagine it'll be somewhere in there. He said at one point some 60 of the kids that he's got in drills were with the first group, which he likes. The thing I'm interested in, I think that's critical, is the O-line. I don't know if you guys saw the news today. They hired a new guy, O-line coach.
Yeah.
They only kept Joe. They only kept Joe Pollack for a year, and now he's at Central Michigan. And they brought in Kennesaw State's Cameron Norcross as their new O-line guy. And I didn't see any real big bump in last year's O-line play from the year before when they did make the national championship game, and yet their O-line coach, Chad Germer, stepped down a couple levels to MSU Northern for his next coaching job. Add to that, two starting linemen from last year that had a year left aren't back. Declan McCabe and Journey Grimsroom didn't come back out. And so there's some new guys that are going to figure in there and under a new coach. Dylan Botner is one of the holdovers. He got his extra year back because he missed a year. Well, he missed that national championship run with a torn patella. And he was a senior standing last year, but now he got an extra year. So he's going to go back. And I imagine he's going to figure out one of the tackles and start and be a mainstay for him. Better O-line play would, I think, mean better quarterback play. I'm wondering who's going to figure in there. I think USC kid they're pretty high on, Jake Jensen. Of course, Hayat is back after making 6 starts last year. And, I'm wondering about safety. There's 9 safeties back. One of them is Kashko Kachia from Glacier. If you count the nickel back, that's 6 people on the 2 deep. 3 of those guys are back. One of them's pretty darn good, I think, in TJ Roush. Another one is the kid that came in from MSU a year ago, Color. And then, Drew Deck is going to be a senior receiver and probably a senior leader. He's from Glacier. I think Isaac Kime has moved from tight end, which was another huge group, over to DN, where we don't have Henry News to watch, number 96, on Saturdays anymore. He also gave up his senior year of eligibility. So a lot to watch. It'll be my first look at him. We couldn't, the media couldn't really watch spring drills, which I think is kind of silly because not a whole lot happens. But, it's nice to see who looks good at running back and who looks good at receiver, who's catching the ball all the time. But so I'm looking forward to just seeing how they look. It's for a lot of us who aren't in the quarterback club and on the staff, it'll be our first look.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the top question and the number one thing that people are going to want to look at is going to be the quarterback's room, just because of the questions that you had last year with, splitting reps between quarterbacks and getting a new transfer in, Logan Fife on the way out. Then, Fritz has mentioned you got Gage Slider out there. You got Luke Flowers, the redshirt freshman as well, out there. So there's everybody who might show up and shine out during the spring game. That's really what it's all about. It's just kind of seeing who has put in the effort during these winter months to, better themselves as a player. It's pretty simple. You can't expect to go into this and see everybody on the roster coming out the other side as well for fall, because the transfer portal is going to open back up. You're going to have a bunch of different changes, and it's not going to look the same again once again. So it's take everything with a grain of salt. But it's always nice to see, who went out there, put in the work during the offseason so far. And of course, there's more offseason to come. Quarterback room, of course, who's going to fill in the other starting positions that left. And like Fritz mentioned, with that offensive line, how's it going to look now with a new coach for the third consecutive year? So,
yeah. And so with that being said, it seems like, it's football. We're going to be excited for any sort of football we can get our hands on. But spring games have kind of been canceled in a lot of different colleges across the country. And you have people like Deion Sanders, who has a prominent voice in college football, saying that they're trying to move from spring games and have it more of like an exhibition type game where you go on with those spring games against other teams. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is just another step in like college football evolution? Do you think this is a good thing, or do you think this could possibly lead to more injuries in the future playing against opponents and not your teammates?
I personally would love to see this happen.
Me too.
More than just a glorified practice session. I would like to see kind of maybe how Montana and they treated that spring with COVID. They opted out of the spring season, but they still played one or two games against other opponents who had opted out. And so, it doesn't have to be top level play. You don't have to go out there and actually play and keep score and everything. But I feel like going up against other guys and hitting not your teammates is always what players want to go out and do. So it definitely, I think, would add to that. I could also see it maybe kind of how college basketball has started to go to these charity basketball scrimmages before the season starts. And there's different rule sets, and coaches can request certain things. If you want to go up against a 2-3 zone to see how your offense plays against that, you can ask the other team to do that. I think that would also add to this, where it's still a game, but you're able to kind of work out practicing against what maybe you're weakest at and try to develop it. So I feel like there's just a bunch of different ways that they can improve this. And I think it would be great for fans. I think it would be great for the players on the field. I think it's great for the coaches. I think it just would be a benefit all around, but it's all to the NCAA at this point, because I know they shut down Deion Sanders' ideas. So,
yeah.
I'm going to kind of take the opposite tact, way opposite. I think spring games are an endangered species, whether they're inter-squad or playing somebody else. I think, they were televising Montana's spring games, and they're not doing it this year. And, if you wonder why, well, the portal reopens on April 16th. So if you're playing Friday, which the Griz are, and somebody shows out and decides to go in the portal, there you are again. You're scrambling. I think that's maybe has something to do with the fact that Nebraska, among others, is not doing a spring game. Because why show everybody what you have and then have a kid hit the portal based on how he looked, in that scrimmage? And I just, and then you add in Frank Ogilvie from the Missouri, and I were talking about this yesterday. Then you add in, if they keep expanding the FBS playoffs, which I'm sure they will, and all of a sudden that season's trickling into late January, maybe February. And then when you fit in spring drills, then you're probably looking at maybe the big schools bag spring drills altogether and have more or less like, the summer camps that the NFL does, use that as a model and just keep everything under wraps until you have your exhibition games in the fall. So I don't know. I just, spring drills has always been hard to write about as somebody who covered Griz football for a while. And I just, and then the spring game kind of is also kind of hard to write about. So I don't know. It'd be great if they actually played somebody. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, fair enough. A lot of good points you guys both made there. I'm curious to see what happens with it, because spring games have never been something that's really drawn my interest. And because of those reasons, like you said, and a great point about the portal opening back up, we're going to touch on that a little bit later. But yeah, you have a 5-day break between the portal starts opening back up, and people can easily just jump ship once again. But moving on to kind of to pivot from our normal conversations, is we got to talk about a local kid, Jackson Pressley, the quarterback for the Glacier Wolfpack, was originally committed to go to Boise State. He has since flipped his commitment and has now agreed on a commitment with Montana State. What does this mean for the future at quarterback for the Bobcats? We know that Vigen's son is on his way to join the team. Fritz mentioned to me the Stanford quarterback joining the team. Was this the right move for Pressley? I guess that's up to him to decide. But is this a good move, or what is the quarterback room going to look like for the Bobcats going forward, Fritz?
Well, it's going to be pretty crowded. They've
Yeah.
got two guys coming in that should figure in the depth chart this fall. Vigen, and then this River Warren out of Oklahoma was pretty highly touted too. They still have that Florence kid who's a great athlete, Patrick Duchesne. He's a sophomore. He's still in the room. And then I think they probably have to like Justin Sampson. I'm sorry, Lamson out of Stanford. He's the quarterback transferring up from the Cardinal. So an uphill battle already. Maybe it makes it more of a steep climb. I think MSU is in a very attractive place if you play quarterback, because I think Brent Vigen really does a nice job. I mean, he had a reputation when he was still at Wyoming that he was a quarterback whisperer. And Brock Jensen, I thought, was a great athlete and not a great quarterback, but he got a couple of national titles at NDSU under Vigen's help as a quarterback coach. Then he goes to Wyoming, and Josh Allen just plays lights out and is now a great NFL quarterback. So he already had a good rep, and then you see how Tommy Millott just evolved into somebody who was just, I think he's going to get drafted. I don't think necessarily quarterback, but he's going to get drafted, I think, in the NFL. So, if I had to compare the two, Vigen's he's got a nice resume. It's hard to not want to play for that guy if you had to make a choice between the two in the state.
Tommy Millott played incredibly as a freshman and everything, and just continued on and became the quarterback that he was this last season under Brent Vigen the last 2 years. So it's a great situation for Brent to be in. He's got three-star quarterback recruits coming in this next 2 seasons now. He's got the transfer in from Stanford, the replacement of Tommy Millott, which was a big question, seems to at least have options now to, make it a good setup for the Bobcats this next season and not have that gap. So but one thing with this quarterback room that I'm going to want to see is when we revisit this in a year or two down the line, when Presley's there and completed his freshman year, somebody's not going to be happy because they're not going to get the rotation minutes, at least one person. So that's the biggest thing for me, is just seeing what the quarterback room with these guys looks like down the line a couple of years, and where maybe they go after this, if there's transfers up. Presley, as we mentioned, had the commitment to Boise State, so he's already had the Mountain West look, or Pac-12 look, I guess it'll be at that point. So just where everyone's going to be in that situation.
Yeah, and that is something I should have clarified on. Presley still has a year left at high school, so he won't be joining them next season, but he should be in the year after. But just from my little perspective of covering a couple of the Glacier games this year, it seems like Vigen does have a typical prototype of a quarterback, which is a guy who's a dual threat, which I think Presley is, a guy who can throw and run. And you saw that with Millott. And I haven't had a chance to watch Vigen play his son, but I know that Presley's got the athletic ability. Do you think that's a fair statement to say, Fritz, that he kind of has a prototype of just an athletic quarterback?
Well, I think Brent Vigen's really adapted to whoever's playing quarterback, and I think he turned Tommy Millott into more than a passing quarterback. I mean, he was pretty good at hitting those routes that he had to, but he was just so much speed. I don't know how fast Jackson is. I don't think he's got that kind of top end, but he's a great thrower. So I'm sure he would adjust to Presley once he rolls out there in 2026 to fall camp. And I think his kid Grant is more of a drop back, stand in the pocket passer as well. He's big and tall, and throws it pretty good. Gallatin used 2 quarterbacks. He used a Burner and Grant, and they kind of been more opposite. So I would say Jackson is more of a double threat than Grant is, but not to say Grant couldn't do it all. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, we're going to move on to a topic that just doesn't seem to escape us, and it's the transfer portal once again. But now that I guess we have this little gap before it opens back up, how are we feeling about the transfer portal? Is there a lot of players that you're looking forward to joining the Big Sky that maybe weren't on the team, or just switching teams, or a player who do you think is going to come in and make an immediate impact, John?
There's 2 things that I want to see right now, and the first one will be this Friday at the Montana spring game. I kind of want to see Jake Jensen. I want to see how he plays for Montana. I want to see where, how he kind of compares against Keely, Yaya. as well as you can in drills early on, just to see, give us an early heads up on maybe what Montana is going to be doing at that quarterback position. And then on top of that, I also like the transfers that the Griz got in Diesel Wilkinson and Michael Wortham from Idaho and Eastern Washington. Just kind of Wortham being an all-around guy that kind of played everywhere. I think he was an All-American at the kick returning position or was a returner this last year. So
Yeah.
it adds, get that in to replace Junior Bergen for Montana. And there's those highlight special teams plays that Bobby Houck loves so much. So, there's those three I really want to see from Montana this year. And then on top of that, the other thing I want to see is just Sacramento State. They have the #1 transfer class coming in the FCS this off season. They also have the #1 recruiting class for this off season. They brought in 25 transfers now. And then we'll talk about it soon here too, but they announced the move to the FBS as an independent. So just everything around Sacramento State right now is just kind of interesting. And I want to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I didn't go down the list of Big Sky schools. I mainly concentrated on the Cats and Griz, and what a difference there is right now. The Bobcats lost some really good players to the portal, 2 running backs who I thought would have great senior years. Well, actually 3 if you count Rohan Jones. But Elijah Elliott transferred out. Scott Trey Humphrey hit the portal and transferred out. Lanyata Alexander's gone sideways over to Idaho at receiver. And, the Griz brought a bunch in. They brought 10 in from the FBS level, 3 of them from USC. We mentioned Jensen. They brought in a couple DNs, Solomon Tuliapupu and DJ Peavy. I like the last name Peavy. They used to have a really good D tackle named Zach Peavy, who's from Hellgate. I'm intrigued about that. I'm intrigued about the 2 Service Academy transfers, Kalen Moran and Skylar Goodman. One's from Air Force, one's from Army. They both play linebacker. Receiver from ASU named Hendricks. I'm intrigued by. You go through Sam Herder's list of transfers, and MSU didn't bring anybody in, but it's early. There's a portal window coming up, and I think they're going to get a bunch before the summer's out. They're pretty thin right now. A lot of kids left, but I think they're going to restock in the next 2 months or through the summer.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Corbin Hendricks. Me being ASU biased, I was going to bring him up. Jake Jensen as well from the Trojans. A couple of the other transfers that I'm interested in seeing is Cash McCollum. He was a quarterback from North Texas. His brother Cooper plays at Texas A&M. He committed to Weber State. I'm curious to see what that looks like. And then I think the obvious, what John said, is what's going on in Sacramento State. Cardell Williams, the quarterback from Tulsa, I think he's going to look great in that offense. And then a couple of other shout-outs I want to give is to the Vandals. They brought in a couple of 3-star defensive ends. Kai Richardson from Oregon State committed to the Vandals, and then Maurice Himes from University of Washington, also an edge, committed to the Vandals. So I think those are good pickups to kind of fill that void that the Vandals had on their defensive end. They were a really good defensive team last year. And then they also got a tight end from Boise State, Oliver Fisher, who was another 3-star player. So the Vandals, they didn't have a lot of splashes like Sacramento State did, but they added a lot of good quality players. I think all 3 of those guys are going to be immediate starters. That's just my take, but kind of to step away from the Montana team to give shout outs to other teams. But now we're going to dive into what John kind of touched on, which is what's going on with Sacramento State. A few days ago, they officially put in their transfer to the FBS. We all thought that they were trying to get in the Pac-12. It seems like they're now trying to go the independent route. What does this mean for Sac State? Is this a good move, bad move for them? And what does it mean for the future of Big Sky? And so, John, since you brought this up, let's start with you.
It's definitely an interesting move. I think it doesn't surprise anybody that they want to move up to the FBS because they've kind of made that intention be known, that they were looking for that Pac-12 bid or that Mountain West bid. I think the surprising thing about it is that they made the decision to go independent, which I was doing a little bit of research, and I believe I only found one school that actually made the request to go independent and got it approved, and that was Liberty, back about, 12 years ago now, 13 years. And they, of course, Liberty has a lot of funding that comes in elsewhere that they can kind of entice a conference to get into. They got into the CUSA, and there's that situation for them. As for Sacramento State, you definitely have to think that the Mountain West or the Pac-12 is where the destination is going to be when they get up there, and that moving up there as an independent, they have kind of that plan in their forefront. The Pac-12 is still looking for at least one more football member. Mountain West is going to be looking to rebuild after everybody kind of goes their own way at this point. So there's definitely the options there for them, but I think it's just interesting that they decided to go as an independent now. This makes them ineligible for the postseason 2025 and 2026. So anything FCS wise, they won't be able to compete in the FCS playoffs. But yeah, it's just an interesting decision with all that talk of them needing a conference when they go up there, that they have put in that request to go up as an independent, and it's not even a guarantee at this point. The NCAA has to approve that they can go as an independent. There's only 2 other independents right now at the FBS level in Notre Dame and UConn. So will the FBS want another one of them there in that situation? I know UMass just left, Army just left, Navy had been an independent. All of them have now joined conferences in the American or the MAC. So it's just one of those things that I just don't know how it'll end, but I think it's a move that we all saw coming.
Good point.
Yeah, I'm a little bit pessimistic about it, and I kind of think, in my mind's eye, when Sac State started hunting around for a conference, they said the Mountain West, and said, maybe you should look somewhere else. And there's only a couple options, so maybe the independent route was the only option, and they're going to have to prove themselves at that level. I don't think they'll have any trouble finding games, playing the new look Pac-12 members and the Mountain West and whatever, I think there's money there, although it doesn't really show up on the football stadium side of things. The football stadium's not very big, and it wasn't very well constructed the few times I was there when I was watching Griz play down there. It's not a surprise because they've been talking about it for months. Mm-hmm. And I think I'd be more surprised if they really made a good go of it. When you look at it, except for the Troy Taylor era, they really just haven't had very much success since they were D2 in the 60s. So I'm taking a wait and see. I think this is probably the best route for them, maybe the only choice they had. And they're going to have to prove themselves at the independent level. And then when somebody needs a team, they'll be an attractive member. Right now, I don't think they are.
Yeah.
If I could hop in there too, really.
Yeah, go ahead,
really
John.
Quick, Josh, too, before you just to kind of mention, I believe that they have a football stadium in the works right now. I had read that they have a 25,000 seat venue that they're planning on building, as well as a new basketball arena that should be opening this year. I think that one's just wrapping up, that they're getting out of the old hangar.
Yeah, those are good points too, because there was that rumor that floating around for a while that they have $50 million in NIL to offer. And based off the transfers and the people that got it, it seems like that they did have some money, because they they definitely were far and away, as far as Big Sky goes, the best transfer recruits that they got. So I'm curious to see what's going on. Something's going on down there in Sacramento, and I'm curious to see how it all works out. But that's going to finish this episode for the Big Sky Now podcast. I want to thank Fritz Neighbor and John Allen for joining me this week. We'll be back again next week. There's a lot of pro days we need to talk about. The portal's going to reopen again. And then also the NFL draft is on their way. As Fritz mentioned with Tommy Malott, there's some other players in the Big Sky, such as Junior Bergen, that we're expected to get drafted. We'll kind of put on our mock draft hats and kind of see what's some good fits for them, or if they help their stock after the pro day. So that'll be happening next week. So we'll be back in action next week for you. I want to thank them again for joining me this week, and we'll see you all next week on another episode of the Big Sky Down podcast. Until then, take care.